welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Something pretty unique today. We're going to talk to DC comic book artist Dan Jurgens. And for those of you who don't know who Dan Jurgens is the creator, writer, and artist for a variety of different comic titles, and even has worked with different companies, but I would say primarily for DC. As an accomplished writer and artist, Dan writes and draws the adventures and really the characters from globally recognized properties such as DC, Marvel, and even more in some independent fashion. Dan has created an abundance of characters that have become, enduring staples within those universes. Like I said, primarily he's done a lot of work for Superman, wrote and illustrated within the death of Superman, which was kind of a cultural phenomenon at the time. He also created one of my favorite characters, Booster Gold, and I've had the opportunity to meet Dan a handful of times, but also now to work with Dan and to help him out with some stuff. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm actually going to let Dan in on a little bit of a secret and a little bit of where I am at with a certain initiative of mine. Whether we realized it or not, Dan was kind of the springboard to an idea that has now become, something that I want to build into my future dealings with companies, and how I support the art community and how I do things as a business, as how can I give something back with no strings attached. And I hate using the word free because nothing in life is free, but I think there's a way that we can donate time and effort to help out those in need. And specifically at this time, we're using it to help out artists within the comic book industry. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about with Dan here, and also kind of our story of how him and I connected and how I was able to do that for him. So without further ado, let's do this. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Dan Jurgens, and today we want to talk about a couple different topics. But the first topic I want to talk about is kind of the story behind the new and improved danjurgens.com, kind of how we got there. I have my own version of this story. It's maybe a little different than yours.
Okay.
But I'd kind of like to hear it from your perspective, and just to kind of play off each other and see what this experience was like for both of us. And then I'll tell you even a little bit more about kind of what's come from that.
I had a website, danjurgens.com, that had been up and running maybe 5 or 6 years, I'd say. And obviously, in terms of website development, design, maintenance, and everything else, 5 to 6 years is sort of a lifetime. And we had gotten to the point where I was starting to realize I needed to update, needed to do something a little bit differently, needed to have more functionality, have a better look, better feel. And around that time, you reached out to me and had said, "Hey, we'd be interested in seeing what you want to do." I can't remember if you had seen the website and already knew I had one, or were just asking me if I had one, what my thoughts were. But you kind of reached out and said that you could be of assistance that way. And I kind of think that's then when we started having this conversation of what could that be? How could it look? How could we make it work? For me, I was very busy at the time, and it was a question of how much would I have to pull together and give to you? Because it's not like I can just say, okay, go ahead and do that. If I hire someone to paint my house, it's not like I have to go out and get the paint and the ladders in their truck and pick them up and drive them over. But for a website, certainly I had to get you materials. And so a lot of it was, once we even started the conversation, was me finding the time where I could start to pull things together, including my thoughts on what a new and improved website would look like.
Just the other side of that is I'd met you a couple times at some different ponds in Minneapolis and stuff, and I was aware of who you were and those kinds of things. And one of the things I've always tried to do since I started my business, I tried to be giving with my time and giving with my services. And yes, I need to make money, but at the same time, I just want to help people out. And selfishly, there's a part of that. I do it for myself because it makes me feel good. And it gets me into some of these situations where it's just kind of makes the work fun again.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular day, I might have told you this when I sent you that original email, but it was just one of those weeks where it was like, man, what am I doing? Being self-employed, this is insane. Like you just kind of have those moments where it's not fun all of a sudden. And I was kind of resetting my mind, and it was just surfing and came across your website. And the more I dug into it, I could identify the fact that, yeah, this thing needs an uplift or an upgrade, so to speak. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'm just going to reach out to him and see if he's interested. And it might be just kind of a fun project to kind of tinker with. And I don't know that even when I hit send, I was maybe anticipating a response. So when I actually got the response, I was like, whoa, okay, well, now we're really talking about it. And, it was just kind of interesting how it was like a happy accident that I was having one of those days and I decided to try to do something extra or do something outside of the box just to fill my own cup back up. It was kind of the idea. So now that I got you on here, thank you for responding. And yeah, it was for me, it was just a fun project. And I'll let you kind of pick up where we're leaving off here, but I just wanted to do something, for somebody who had made somewhat of an impact in my life, but at the same time, I've always been a kind of an art nerd comic book guy, and I just know that industry is very hard. I know that building websites and the social media technology part of it's probably not the gig or the interest of most artists. And I started to think about, how can I be of service there, and how can I support and do something extra for this industry that I love, and get to know some of these people, and maybe just help solve some of their problems, really, is what I was looking to do.
Sure. And the other part of it is then we'd been talking, or chatting through email for probably what, like 6, maybe even 8 months. And then you came by my table at a convention so that we could then put, or I could put a face to the name and everything. And I think once we actually met, and it was brief because I was busy and you weren't in town that long, but even to be able to put a face to the name and to start to say, yeah, okay, there's a real human being on the other side of this, because so often I get approached with some bizarre and not so bizarre type requests, and you never know what's really behind some of this stuff, and some of them do turn out to be quite sketchy. So to be able to meet and then start talking, and then to start to work through the question of, I had a few ideas as to what I would kind of like to see. I have no idea how to make that a reality, but I could at least then start talking to you, Mike, and say, hey, is this possible? Can I do this? Is this something that can be achieved? How hard is this to do? And so we could start to take it from there. So and at the same time, just as hopefully it became fun for you because it steps outside the box a little bit in terms of what you probably normally do, it's fun for me to be able to think about things a little bit differently, like giving you the artwork and saying, is there a way to make this fade from initial sketch, through to pencils to inks to color, print, that kind of thing. And to find out, yeah, we can do that and have it work out was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the two things that I'll add here that kind of were the gas in this engine, so to speak, as well, is the fact that I don't remember when I found this out. I mean, I was probably a lot younger, but when I found out you were from Minnesota, that kind of blew my mind, because as a kid, always wanting to be an artist and a comic book artist and whatever, you just kind of know that those worlds exist in New York or California, or like
Right.
you just don't really realize that it exists in Minnesota. So when I found out you were from Minnesota, I think that was a connection for me that I'm like, whoa, that's so cool. I don't know why that's cool, but that's so cool that he's from Minnesota. And then the other part is, I had told you at one point that the first comic I ever bought was Booster Gold #7. And
Mhm.
I'd always seen comics, like comics, whatever, but that's, the point in which I started collecting and kind of consuming comics was at that point. And it's always been one of my favorite covers. It's always been one of my favorite heroes. And it just kind of maintained that connection for me. So when I got a chance to do it, this first one for you and have it be somewhat personal and from my home state and all that good stuff. It was just kind of a perfect storm of happy accidents that kind of brought that all together. So, um, what was really the change for you in getting that upgrade? Because like I look at like where social media is now, and I got to think as a comic book artist and somebody who goes to shows, and social media has got to be like a huge tool for you and just something that you can utilize on a daily basis to get it out there, right?
You can, like anything in life, I think social media it's like having a car in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, you can use the car as a very utilitarian tool to get you from point A to point B, however long the distance might be. Or, you can drive off a bridge one night and plunge in the river. And
Yeah, right.
I think social media is like that too, that the pitfalls are there as well. There are many and they are obvious and they are not often as obvious as they should be, but it's an effective tool to let a lot of people know in a hurry about a book that might be coming out that week or in 2 weeks, or a convention appearance you're going to make, or even to be on the floor of a convention and say, I'll be appearing and signing today from noon to 2 o'clock, something like that.
Yep.
So you can certainly use it for that, and reach out and touch a lot of people very, very quickly. And especially in terms of, I think, teasing product, it can work very well. Here's a cover, here's the first couple of pages of a book that's coming out, that can kind of draw people in a little bit and get them interested. And I think now we're finding out, because conventions really don't exist in the year 29 or 2020, and who knows about 2021, it becomes an even more useful tool to again hit a lot of people very quickly with notice of what you have on the stands, what is out there, what might be happening to their favorite character, and get them interested and remind them that, yeah, their books are still out there, their stores are still open, and they're, go out and buy the books and let us know what you think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to back up on one thing that you had said and then fast forward again and kind of tell you where I'm at. You had mentioned kind of, the solicitation of, hey, can you do this or whatever? And sometimes not knowing if it's a real solicitation or if it's sketchy or kind of who's behind that keyboard, so to speak. And as I've been kind of evolving whatever this is, I'm experiencing that to some degree as I'm starting to formalize what it is I want to do. And I'm starting to formalize the process. Now, to jump ahead, what I'm doing or what's kind of become a thing since doing that first one is we did a similar type thing where we built a website at a just basically a fire sale for a comic book store. I'm actually reaching out and talking to other artists I know and trying to get a better understanding of where the gaps are and where some of the needs are.
Mhm.
And what I'm kind of leaning towards or migrating towards is there's going to be a campaign within my company CyberDogs and also within my new website where we're going to call it Good for Nothing, and we're basically going to reach out to people that we hope it flips, that they start reaching out to us and asking. But to start with, we're going to start identifying some areas where we can help artists. And I want to make it art centric. It doesn't have to be just the comic book world, but that's just kind of where we're starting. But I want to make it art centric because of the arts and the way it kind of has brought me to where I'm at in my career. But we're calling this campaign Good for Nothing. And we want to do good for, a little to low price or nothing, and help build some of this stuff for other artists, other comic book artists, and people that are trying to kind of make steam with that skill set. So like I said, we did your site, we did a local comic book shop. I'm currently doing one for Chris Capana, who's an independent artist, and I'm in talks with we're trying to figure out kind of the details, but I'm working with Emma Kubert right now to possibly do hers next.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so we're going to keep kind of going down this road. And then as I learn this a little bit more, I'm going to keep formalizing it because I want to make it an initiative of what my company is. So many other companies do, donations to United Way or whatever it is their good cause is. I want to give my donation and my efforts to the arts. And this is kind of how we're crafting that model of how we're going to do it. So you were kind of our pilot. I didn't know it at the
I was
time.
the guinea pig.
You were kind of the guinea pig. I didn't know it at the time, but we had such a good time doing it. And I think, what came of that was now this movement or this initiative to do it for a lot of other people. So that's kind of what's coming together from that. I wanted you to kind of know that
Okay.
we're continuing this. So it's interesting. So thanks again for being our guinea pig, I guess.
Well, thanks for the offer. I mean, it is funny that to go back to what I brought up earlier about so many inquiries, and it's one of the things I've always dealt with, which is um, there, and I think many artists get exposed to this, and maybe I get more because of my profile, but it is the constant request of, hey, can you do this? Would you be interested in this? I have this idea, and it comes in often by the truckloads. Sometimes it's writers who say, "Gee, I have this idea. I want to run by you for my favorite Superman story." And the first thing I have to say is, "Well, I can't hear it. I am working for the publisher, and like the last thing I can do is hear what your idea might be, whether it is even one that they want to own or whatever. They want me to draw an 800 page graphic novel, and they have no money. um, there are always these things that are out there. So the nice thing about this one is that it turned out to work out very, very well, I think, for both of us. I think it was mutually beneficial. And I know I learned something in the process. And Mike, it sounds like you and your guys did too. So again, it was something that worked out. And I think what it also does is provide me with some thoughts and ideas of where we might go with it in, say, 2 years or so. That the one thing we know is things don't just stand still. We're not anchored in cement. And especially in this world as it exists right now and is changing so much, I suspect that for a lot of artists, if you were to work with them, what you will start to deal with is the concept of online sales, because so much of that is necessary for artists just because of being able to appear at conventions that, like I say, don't exist this year. And by 2021, they might exist, but will they be smaller in terms of those who can attend and everything else? So, all of a sudden, the concept of the website becomes even more important than it was when you and I started.
And I want to be clear too, like like I said, it's a happy accident that we're at this point and it's starting to develop this model. But like selfishly, when I reached out to you the first time and wanted to do yours, I wouldn't have cared if nothing ever came of it other than to just do something cool. And it's kind of interesting how when you drop the business, like I'm not worried about my margin, I'm not worried about my price, I'm not worried about all the stuff that may or may not have broken the conversation or made it so it just didn't happen. I just did it because I wanted to do it. I thought it would be fun, just kind of taking the parameters off of it. I think it turned into something pretty cool. And that's what I want to continue to work on. And to your point on the importance of how it's going to evolve is I completely agree with you. And I think it's going to really evolve and be important for those who are established. But I really want to see somebody who's not established make it because of. I want Chris Capana to call me up in a year and say, dude, I just got the biggest gig of my career because of
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Like I want to have helped him succeed because I think that would be just awesome. So that's kind of where I want this to go. I don't really know what that looks like, but I know that I think we're on the right track. We just got to get a few more under our belt and figure out how we can exactly, continue to help and hopefully grow the exposure to some of these artists and their work and what it means to the industry. So
Yeah.
the last thing I want to add in here, just because I want to make sure that people understand why this topic is even brought on this podcast, is that the Brand Retro podcast for me is always about, finding your center and your why. And so when I'm working with different businesses, I'm always working with them on the brand side of it and helping them connect the dots and stay accurate and true to their brand. For this situation, for Dan Jurgens, we created a personal brand.
Hmm.
You already had a name in the industry, like you said, that you've got a track record of work that I think kind of had you there, but now we gave it an identity to go with it, so that we married the two, brought the personal brand up a notch, and that's kind of the business side of why this connects and why I think this was a good fit and a good conversation for this podcast. So thank you again for being on, and I appreciate it.
Of course, man, and thanks for everything you did. I mean, maybe it's one of those rare things in life that actually turns out to be a win-win for everybody involved.
I hope so. I'm anxious, and I gladly will keep you posted on how this progresses. But I'm anxious to see how it evolves here in the next couple of years, because it seems like with every one we do, we get a little bit more steam and a little bit more less guarded reaction. Because I think right now the hurdle is that everybody wonders, well, why do you want to do this? Like, why do you want to help me? And that's the part. It's like I just want to help you, you
Yeah,
know. So once we get over that, I think it'll be fun when people understand it's a real thing and it's a benefit to them. So
sure, great.
awesome. If you're looking to learn a little bit more about Dan Jurgens, who Dan is, some of the work he's done, check out the new website that we built for Dan at danjurgens.com. And then also, if you want to follow Dan, kind of see what he's up to right now with everything going on in the world, there's not a lot of comic book shows or different things like that happening, but you can kind of keep track of what Dan's up to at the Dan Jurgens, or at the Dan Jurgens on Twitter. He's pretty active on there and sharing kind of where he's at, updates and whatnot. And then also, as always, please, if you know anybody that's like-minded and looking for brand marketing assistance and maybe just a good podcast to listen to, please like and share the podcast. Please make sure to review it as well, and check us out at cyberdogsmarketing.com.